Application CFC files have implicit methods in them. That is to say, methods that if you create them, they'll automatically run at different times during the life cycle of your CFML application. For example, on application start, on request, on session start, on request end, or on error. You don't have to call these methods directly. The CFML engine fires them internally or implicitly when appropriate as your application runs and different events happen throughout the course of that application. Callbox itself has implicit methods that go into your event handlers, similar to these in the application CFC file. These were also created for us automatically when we did the Callbox create app at the beginning of this video series, and they're commented out by default, but they're in the top of your application CFC event handler. You can see the implicit functions we looked at in a previous video, pre-handler, post-handler, and around handler, and right below those are these other implicit methods: on missing action, on error, on invalid HTTP method. Notice that the implicit methods are pre and post. These are items that are using aspect-oriented programming, naming conventions to hook into different spots in your event handler, and they run as different things happen within that event handler. The implicit methods are similar to the ones you'd find in your application CFC file. On missing action is always going to be named on missing action. There's no missing action handler function down here somewhere in the CFC file. There's no error handler down here in the CFC file, things like that. These methods will just run as different things happen within the lifecycle of your application. Let's take a look at on missing action. On missing action works sort of like on missing template in the application CFC file, but instead of looking for missing CFM files, it looks for missing actions in your handler. We know our app has a /users/list and /users/details actions, and we can run them, and we can also run the save handler action, but there's no UI for that one. It just redirects to the list page when that one's done running. What if someone has a typo in the URL when they go to users/list? What if they forget the I and they go to users/lst? Or worse yet, what if a hacker tries to go to /users/admin to see if there's a valid admin screen at that URL so they can try to hack into your website? We can use on missing action to account for both of those situations. You simply uncomment the method. We've already done that here in this video. Restart Callbox, and then add something into that function like we have here on the screen. We're now using Callbox's baked-in logging functionality to log an error about the invalid action that was visited. Then we're relocating the user back to the list users page, which is a valid URL. That way, if they typo a URL like we saw a minute ago, users/lst, it bounces us back to the users list page like we just saw. Or if I go to something like users/admin, it will also bounce me back to the users list page. The user is not aware of what happened internally. They don't know that we actually logged this missing action into a log file for later investigation, which is a good idea. You don't want to affect the flow of your legitimate users on the website by flashing some sort of weird error message on the screen saying invalid action or anything like that. Nor do you want to inform the hackers that you're aware that they're trying to hack into your website. We simply log the issue to a log file, relocate the user to a working portion of the website that they are allowed to use, and carry on with whatever the user was going to do. On error is just like the on error handler in the application CFC file, except that this one runs at the handler level. Instead of one error method that works for your entire application, you can have different error handlers for each section of your application, one in each handler CFC file. Maybe you want errors in the admin screen of your app logged differently than errors on the front-end public-facing portion of your website. Or maybe the code in one handler CFC is for internal beta testers that are helping with QA, so it's okay for them to see more of the exception details from the server in their error message output than you would want to have visible in something for a typical user on the website. You can manage all of that by simply having an on-error handler in each of the various CFCs in your handlers folder and tailoring each of them to meet whatever your needs are. On-error receives mostly the same arguments that the onMissingInclude method receives, the typical event, RC, and PRC constructs, so it works basically the same way as the rest of your handlers do. Please note that compile time errors will not fire this method, only runtime exceptions while the app is actually running. So don't think of on-error as a replacement for tools like code analyzers or linters. This is just for runtime error checking, the same as on-error in your application CFC file would be. So you still want to have your linters or whatever other code analysis tools you have running in addition to your on-error handler in your CFCs. And lastly, we have on-invalid HTTP method. This method will fire automatically if an action in your handler is executed with the incorrect HTTP verb. For example, say you have a handler user API with a delete method inside it, like we have here on the screen. I'm in users API and there's my delete. In your router CFC file, you could have a route set up so that anytime someone goes to /user API /delete, this method is executed, and it must be executed via the delete HTTP verb. So get and post requests would not work and accidentally delete records from the system. Well, you can look for those accidental get and post calls and log them for later analyzing by using the on-invalid HTTP method call, like we have over here in our user CFC file. And actually, we've got it also at the top of this API file. It's just not commented out here. So it's still green, and flipping back over here so you can see the better color coding syntax. I'd get the same thing happening over here if I just simply move this comment up this way. And now we have a working on-invalid HTTP method. We would have to restart callbox for this change to take effect. You can simply, of course, go to your command line and do callbox reinit from the command box prompt, and now it will run. Now, anytime someone tries to run the user API /delete method, if it was called with the incorrect verb type, this implicit method would fire for us automatically and give us a chance to log that error to the system, prevent the delete from happening, things of that nature. Just for clarity, the delete method that I mentioned does have to exist. This isn't an on-missing method kind of thing, but if the method is there, which it is in this case, and it was called with the wrong verb, then the implicit method would fire off, giving us an extra level of protection against something going wrong with our application. And like the others, all you have to do is activate it by uncommenting and restarting callbox. That's true for all of the implicit functions and all of the implicit methods that we've been talking about in the last couple of videos. Uncomment them, restart callbox, and they're all set and ready to start working for you. More information about implicit methods in callbox can be found on the Ordis Books website at callbox.ordisbooks.com. And you can see there's great documentation in here for how all of the different implicit methods work. And again, like the other advanced features in callbox, if you don't feel you would take advantage of this feature, if it might be more complex than you're comfortable using at this point, you can simply ignore the feature, leave it commented out for now, and come back to it later on when you're more comfortable adding this kind of functionality into your application.